Our speaker tonight is David Droppers, and his talk is titled Like a Butterfly to a Flame, Butterfly Recolonization Following a Fire. Many of you know David as a longtime member of WBA and perhaps through his mothing programs at our annual conferences or as a presenter of wonderful talks on how to differentiate fritillaries or blues or other confounding relative species. David also presented recently on his multi-year project surveying butterflies found on the Mountain Loop Highway. He is now working on a new project and will share his initial results. After the Bolt Creek fire of 2022, he is seeking to understand how butterflies recolonize after a wildfire in the coniferous forests of Western Washington and how that area compares with other fire studies in other habitats. He'll present who has appeared in the early years of recovery, what he's learned so far, and what may be applied to other fire studies in the state. This is particularly relevant now because Karen Holtrup will be beginning fieldwork this spring on the Olympic Peninsula following the recovery of that area after the Bear Gulch fire. So thank you so much for being with us tonight, David.
And Tana's going to help with that too.
Perfect. Oh, that's
She
right.
has she ha she
Karen
has no
mentioned
choice. She
it.
has no choice.
Thank you for reminding me of that. Yeah, thank you, Tana.
You're
So
welcome.
take it away.
Yes, go ahead. Thank
All
you.
right. So thank you everyone for joining me tonight. So this is all the data I've collected. I shouldn't say all of it, but the highlighted data I've collected in the 3 years since I started the project. So I was able to start the year after this. Talk about how that kind of came to be. But project's certainly not done. We'll kind of outline how long I expect to continue this project. So these are the preliminary results. Nothing, 3 years is no trend. Nothing I can really draw big conclusions from. I mean, especially with how butterfly populations fluctuate from year to year. We all know that, and we'll talk about how some of them are already kind of confounding me. But anyway, we'll kind of keep going on. So Boat Creek fire started, I believe, September 10th of 2022. It was a big fire. It shut down one of our major highways for weeks. One second. So shut down major highway, threatened homes, burned. I never got a number, but it's burned several homes. Not too many. It's not like it went through a developed area. But, trapped hikers, rained ash on us in the Seattle area. Uh, it was kind of a big one. So at this point, I'd like to jump from this presentation to a video I found from two hikers that got trapped, just to kind of get you in the mode of surviving a fire and remembering that there are butterflies and all that kind of stuff out here as well during that time.
You might want to
So,
mention about the volume, David.
what's that?
You might want to mention about the volume before you start it.
Well, you already have. This
Oh,
video is a little bit quiet, so you might want to turn up your volume.
yes.
I should mention there is one F-bomb thrown in there, but when you're facing a fire, I think that's kind of appropriate. So,
Once we got on top of the ridge, the trail was pretty flat. By then, the wind started to pick up.
Well, we're up on the ridge and it is absolutely windy.
We made it up the ridge and started our climb heading up the V-notch. Little did we know that 1 hour later that a fire ripped through there and had us fearing for our lives. At this point, we could see the smoke, but we didn't know there was a fire in the area. We figured it was just smoke blowing in from eastern Washington because of the high winds. We continue heading up for the summit. We got to the top of the V-notch and we started making our way up the summit. Once we climbed up this first part, that's when we noticed the fire, which was a couple ridges away.
Yeah, we're gonna turn around. I don't want to risk it. We can jam down. Yeah, it's gonna blow it pretty. I see the flames.
We started making our way down the V-notch, and this is where we got stuck. This is us looking down the V notch, and as you can see, it's a lot of smoke, and that was the way we came. So we really didn't have an option to head back that way.
Oh, fuck. That came fast, dude. All right. You think so? All right, well, we are trapped here. We've got fire on either side.
Hopefully you guys get to see this video because otherwise we didn't make it.
Yeah, but there's a fire coming from up that ridge up there, and our trail out is fired out. I mean, it was freaking burning and it's freaking hot. Had to call 911. They're gonna try to get search and rescue out here, but I don't think there's anything they can do. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna hunker down here for a while, see if everything dies down, and see if we can walk out of here. Fingers crossed. Wish us luck. All right, me and Matt are here. We just got off the phone with 911 in search and rescue, and they cannot rescue us. They said it's too dangerous up here. The wind's too bad. And so we are going to attempt this and get down to the trailhead so that we can get out of here safely. So we'll keep you guys updated and let you know what's going on.
Scary stuff. So what left behind was basically this charred landscape. I mean, you saw how big those flames can be. So concerning butterflies, I mean, I may have been the only one at this point in time when this was burning. I actually had this idea while going up for a snowshoe to Stevens Pass. And that was my first time driving through this fire area and seeing how close it burned to the highway. And I may have been the only one thinking, this is a wonderful opportunity. Because we have plenty of data as far as butterfly recovery after a wildfire from chaparral, dry forest, prairies. We have even some incoming data from subalpine meadows even, but we have nothing from wet coniferous forests. And this is for several reasons. One, we're kind of wet here, so fires aren't frequent, and they often kind of sputter and don't really get going. When they do get going, they can be massive because we have so much fuel built up over years. And when they do happen, they often tend to be kind of remote, and so therefore access can be a problem. So we don't really have a lot of data from this kind of a habitat. So the fact that this one burned pretty much right along a major highway means that we got a lot of good opportunities to finally investigate this habitat and see how butterflies compare, or recolonization of butterflies compare to some of these other kind of more well-known, well-studied areas. So this is the satellite view before the fire, and this is Forest Service Road 6512. This is my survey route. More on that later about how I kind of divided it up. And this is the satellite view year after. You can see how much of that landscape has been charred. So to give you an idea of kind of how big this fire was, so ended up burning, official count was 14,820 acres. And to give you an idea, there's Seattle down there. If we take the Seattle City Council districts, that would be like sections 3 and 7 burning up. So anyone who's been through Seattle knows that's a lot of area to burn up. So that was a sizable fire for Washington. But fire doesn't burn equally. So across this landscape, different areas burned more severely. And you can see there's, Paulette, you can see my cursor, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So as you can see, 6512 here, it traverses through several sections of varying severities of burn. So that's something else I'll also be kind of keeping in mind as I look at the data as far as another variable that could play out. So road 6512 goes basically from the edge of the burn to near the core. I actually go into where they suspect the fire started. More on that a little bit later. Now, I got really lucky because I don't have pre-burn data here. But how I got lucky is that I ended up going up the Beckler River Road, and I got road 6546 up here, which did not burn, and it is the same elevation and the same aspect to road 6512. And so that's about as close as I'm going to be able to get to kind of pre-burn conditions. I'm going to use that as a proxy or a control to kind of guess what the butterfly fauna looked like prior to the burn. And so here's a picture of the two roads. I mean, structurally pretty similar, but you couldn't ask for anything different, right? So the one on the left, obviously, this was the year after the burn. This was the May after the burn before everything kind of had a chance to grow back. And then there's your unburned Forest Service road. So road 6512 probably looked very similar to 6546 on the right there prior to the burn. As I said, it goes through not only different soil severities, soil burn severities, but different habitats as well. So you'll notice that there's a power line cut down there. That's gonna be different for various reasons. Most of the path that I walk, most of the road I walk is through what I have classified as burned forest. And then I don't know how, I can't remember how long before, a couple years, I think, before the burn, that area in yellow was clear cut. And so I'm calling that the burned cut, as there are no trees there right now, which you'll see in a bit. But so three different kind of habitat types. I do not count this forested area walking up to the power line for a couple reasons. One, trying to compare this distance to the shorter distance of 6546 may confound some of the data. And the fire didn't really burn as hot down here. This area down here recovered fairly quickly, but you'll still see some pictures first fire year. So what did I find the first year after the Bolt Creek fire? So this is the road leading up to the power line. You can see that this area was burned. The understory is charred, but most of the trees are still alive. So this area is recovered very quickly. And many of the butterflies I've seen down there haven't really changed all that much since the first year, leading me to believe that just the impact of the fire was pretty low. But then you walk up to the power line, and this area definitely was charred. So this was the May afterwards. So you can see PSE has come through, and they've chopped up some of the burned fallen trees since over the winter. But you already see plants poking up through the ground here. And remember, this area farther south, this area didn't have that hot of a burn. So probably a lot of the roots in here did survive, but you can see definitely plenty of the stuff did burn. Charred stumps and the like out there. And then you walk up into the burned forest and the severity gets quite a bit higher. I actually was not able to make it to the core area because of all the down trees over the winter, so burned and then blew over in winter storms. But just completely charred up there. I could still smell. It just smelled like smoldering, even after a wet winter. Packed snow on there, and I still smelt the burn. And then you look out over the ridge, and you just see the ridge just matchsticks. But you can see a couple of trees survive down in the valleys where it might have been a little bit wetter. But there were still some surprises, even within this charred area. I still had a few wildflowers that would come up like this trillium. So, encouraging sign. And even within the burn area, there was like little differences here and there. So this is an area I call the wet refugia. It's a little dip along the hillside. There's water running through there even in August. And it's largely composed of things like alders. It's got an understory of devil's club, elderberry. This place survived. So you can see this is the May after the burn. All the alders are still leafing out. They're green. So this area didn't really get touched. If it did, it swept through really quickly or kind of sputtered out and didn't really continue. So this was going to be another little variable where could look at this section. And then you get to the core area. So this is the part I call the burned cut. So this was a clear cut prior to the burn. This is where officials think the fire started. This is an area that, people come up, they do target shooting, they camp. And so given that wind that the previous video showed, they think that may have been a campfire that got out of control. But you can already see, even in May, you can see greenery popping up. That is fireweed. This fire probably went out about sometime early October, and that's plenty of time for all the fall floating seeds of fireweed to settle in and have that winter of germination. So already starting to green up there even in just May. Some more pictures of the core cut, just kind of showing the extensiveness of all the dead trees up there. You'll also notice this little dip in here in the core cut. That is a marshy, I wouldn't call it a pond, but definitely a marsh. And I heard frogs up there. So that was another area that was wet enough that the fire didn't really settle there, and we had survival. So frogs survived this hot fire. A lone waterfall in the middle of the burn cut was kind of eerie. This waterfall in the middle of all this charred forest. But even in this area, I had plants popping up and blooming, like this tiger lily, which mostly I associate with very moist, exposed meadows. It clearly survived the fire and even had a Lepidoptera visitor. Now, I'm fully aware that this is the first butterfly I've shown you the whole well, this is a moth, but this is the first Lepidoptera I've shown you, excuse me, the entire presentation. So that will change very shortly. We will show you more of the fluttery flaps that got in here. Quite a view, though. Generally, I'll come up here much earlier than the heat of the day really starts, because I'd rather climb during the coolness of the morning and then just wait for it to warm up for the butterflies to fly. And that is not a bad view to wait out the time. And even after the first year, here's what it looked like in July. So not as pink as it is now, but already the fireweed is blooming. Already the fireweed was blooming in July in that spot. So color can come fast. If we can jump back down to the power line, this is one thing that some of my mentors actually found an intriguing idea. So one, I expected this habitat to recover much quicker from terms of butterfly populations, not just structurally, for two reasons. One, we already talked about it. It didn't really burn as hot over here because fuel just doesn't really pile up here. PSC clears this because it needs it clear for transportation, maintenance, and all that kind of stuff. But there's also it's low, it's open. I also expect it to recover from a butterfly perspective because this is basically a long dispersal corridor. So it burned right here. You see all the brown over here. But then it's got all this section to the east where any butterflies that were eliminated by the fire could quickly be replanted via dispersers coming from the east or maybe even from the west. So little barriers to dispersal in here. And this is where I found a lot of butterflies, certainly in the first year and continuing, but I also found a lot of butterflies that I associate with eastern Washington, which is what my mentors found interesting. This may be a corridor for dispersal from the east. So clouded sulfurs, I got 3 of them in 2025. I've only gotten 1 orange sulfur, which is surprising that clouded sulfurs would be more common than orange sulfurs. We're used to orange sulfurs straying westward in fall. Consistent Juba skipper sightings over there, and my 1 Acmon blue. And given how fresh it is, that's interesting. Maybe it's not a traveler. Maybe its mother traveled over here and it grew up here. just a guess, but these are butterflies I associate with my Eastern Washington trips, and finding consistent Eastern Washington species throughout the last 3 years. It's an interesting hypothesis, maybe a different project down the line. Not now. I'm concentrated on fire. And I see other open country butterflies up here. These ones you find in Western Washington as well as Eastern Washington, but silvery blues, gray hair streaks. This is the only spot I really consistently see silvery blues. I do these things called max counts, where in this in this graph I show you just the maximum number I found during the year. Early spring species are a little bit difficult because we know up here in Washington our springs are notoriously variable. So you can go out in mid-May, and one mid-May is going to be absolutely chilly, and the other one's going to be warm. So while this looks like, hey, in the power line, are populations of silvery blue declining? I'm not sure we can make that conclusion after only 3 years of data. These guys can maybe 2025 they flew earlier, and I got the tail end of it. Who knows? So of this data, 5 butterflies did stand out as ones that I should pay attention to. So if you look at these 4 sections, we have 3 sections from the burned area, and then I have another from the unburned forest that was 4 miles north. 4 miles north is nothing for a butterfly as far as flight goes. And there were 5 butterflies that stood out as far as really seeming to prefer or be more common, at least in the first year, in the unburned forest. So I'm going to want to monitor these and see when they show back up, when they show up again in the burned area to about the same population levels. So echo blues, I did find a couple of them in the power line, the burned forest, but mostly in the unburned forest. Cedar hair streaks, only in the unburned forest, the control forest.
David, can you go back? What year is that you're showing?
This is 2023, so this was my first year. This is what I have found in my first year.
First year. Okay, just
Yep, we will jump forward to what I have found thus far, but
Sure.
just kind of thinking these are my ideas in 2023, kind of outlining my mindset and where my mind was going with this project. And in the unburned forest, I did find, I think I have identified this green orchid, but I've just wanted to bring this to someone's awareness. I've never seen cedar hair streaks nectaring at a green orchid before, and along that forest road, they were doing so commonly. I found that to be an interesting nectar source. Green commas, also only in the unburned forest. Pacific fritillaries, primarily in the unburned forest. A couple of stray, one stray in the burned forest, one stray in the power line. So, and then let's see, there was one more. Morning cloaks, I only found in the unburned forest. So I said, okay, I'm going to keep particular tabs on these 4 and see when they recolonize the burned area and get to maybe population levels similar to the control area.
So David.
So what am I finding?
David,
Yes.
before you go on, a question about whether that Ackman was a county record.
I checked with Pelham. No.
Okay.
So technically, I dip into King County. That record was in King County, but probably only half a mile away from Snohomish County, which I think would have been a record, right, Pelham? But technically, according to these geopolitical lines, no. King County has had Ackman before.
Okay, thank you.
But still, a really, really cool record I was not expecting. I was thinking, oh, what's that blue? And like, oh dear, what is this doing here? Anyway, so what's it doing now? Well, you can see that gotta click back in here. You can see that the power line has recovered beautifully. It is lush, it's green, it is full of wildflowers. Earlier in the year, it tends to kind of like crisp up by August, but there's still butterflies in August. Maybe it's greened up a little bit too much. So that was 2025. Oh, the Scotch broom is already back. Ooh. Time to burn it again. No, not actually burn it again. Don't burn it again. That will ruin my project. The burn cut is also greening up nicely, primarily with fireweed, but a number of other species too. Pearly everlasting. I think I have more pictures of the flowers. Goldenrod, elderberry, all kinds of things are coming back in. Oh yeah, there you go. Hillside is just pink with fireweed. This place buzzes with hummingbirds later in the year. Like all the adults and then all their children, they're just feasting on all this fireweed. I think I estimate it. It's an estimate with how fast they go. Estimate like 50 individual hummingbirds in this clear cut. And the fireweed has even moved into the forest because it's really not a forest anymore, right? The light is reaching the forest floor, and fireweed is now a dominant wildflower in the burned forest as well. See a couple of questions. Let's see. Oh no, oxeye daisy is absolutely not native, but remember Pyle from my Mountain Loop Highway project? Butterflies do love oxeye daisies. Okay, everyone's talking about the oxeye daisies. Yes, they are oxeye daisies. So you can see goldenrod's in there. Pearly everlasting is also common up there. One thing that really made me feel good. So one of my main things for my Mountain Loop Highway project was figuring out what plants the butterflies really, really liked. The Forest Service would really like to know kind of from a pollinator restoration standpoint. And my advisor at the Forest Service said that they actually used my data from the Mountain Loop Highway project to seed this hillside. So that was really, really meaningful knowing that my previous data has actually helped influence the landscape of my next project. So with all this fireweed, of course, we get some of those that are dependent on it, like our fireweed clearwing moth. Yes, that's a moth. Notice the proboscis, not a bee. It's a moth. Great mimic, and I have seen probably more here than I ever have anywhere else. So maybe there's something to that. I'm not sure enough people have looked at this clearwing enough. And it's not the only moth. We have plenty of other big, distinctive moths. So the six-spotted forester, the females have eight spots. Don't let that fool you. And our bluebell tiger moth, they're now back in the burned area, and they fly during the day. They're distinctive. So of course I'm going to be collecting data on them as well, because it might reveal different conclusions than just the butterflies. So they're back in the burned area as well, given that at least the forester feeds on fireweed as well. Other insects have also shown up. The big megarissa wasps, the ichneumoniid wasps that are now investigating the burned area, looking for all those beetles that are eating the dead wood, drilling into there, laying their eggs in the beetle larvae. So they're out, quite intimidating looking, although absolutely harmless. I'm kind of keeping a track of birds. It's more by a presence absence kind of thing, but I'm noticing a lot of birds kind of similar to the, stray butterflies. A lot of birds I more associate with Eastern Washington. So I have had a house wren nest there for the last 2 summers. Lazuli buntings, I've seen multiple there. I've had common nighthawks flying during the day and calling. I had a pair of mountain bluebirds nest there this summer. I know there is a population not too far away in Darrington, so it's not entirely surprising, but just seeing a group of birds that I don't associate with the west slopes of the Cascades there was pretty cool, given how close this area is to the Cascade Crest. So might I be a little wistful, hoping that a black-backed woodpecker sees this burn, which they are a fan of, and thinks, hey, this is a great spot to set up camp. So I am definitely looking for some of these other rare birds. I've had a rock wren come through, number of different things. So unfortunately, I am one person in this landscape on a time budget. So as much as I would love to study the birds more intensively, I also know bumblebees, and I'm seeing bumblebees going through there. I have to make a choice at some point, right? So I'm intensively looking at the butterflies and day-flying moths. I'm keeping a list of just presence absence of the birds, and I just don't have time to dive into the bumblebees as much as I would like. Such is the limitations of life. I am also happy to announce that black-capped raspberries, one of my favorite native berries, abounds in the burn cut, as this plant does very well after fires. One thing we do have to remember, though, we are still on managed forest lands, and the next generation has been planted. So they have done the planting. All the baby trees are back in. They do want this to come back. This is a crop that they're growing. And this is where I think that this is one reason why I've been talking to Caitlin and her experience on Weyerhaeuser clear cuts and seeing what the data look like on clear cuts, as the structure is very similar to burns, except for all that standing dead wood. But I do have a clear cut that burned, so we'll see how that compares with some of the stuff that she's seen. Now, of course, since this is a cropland, since they are growing a crop, I do occasionally come into these signs warning of herbicide treatments. And you'll notice it says no entry is permitted within 48 hours of application. I have totally obeyed these signs. Totally. But this is another variable that we have to contend with and maybe might make me rethink some of those berries I'm eating depending on the time of the year. Within the burn area, not just the burn cut, but also the burn forest, I've had a number of surprises, individual like singleton species that have shown up. I had a field crescent show up in the burn forest, an Anna's blue at 2,500 feet showed up in the burn cut. And I believe it was the same male that hung around there for 2 weeks because I saw another one with the same chunk out of the wing. So that was bit perplexing that he hung around for 2 weeks. Said this is a cool place to hang out. Other singletons that have shown up that surprised me in the burn have only had one cabbage white in the entire. I know we're far away from civilization, but given that power line corridor, I thought I'd have seen more than one cabbage white by now. Only one orange sulfur, one Mariposa copper showed up, and the aforementioned Ackman blue. So maybe burned areas are really good for all these dispersers to kind of, it funnels them into this open area. But then again, I've also had one Perseus dusky wing, one Bois de Val blue, and one Satyr comma in the unburned area. So maybe singletons aren't that unique to burn areas. We will see over the long term. And as with most strays, in this case a migrant, the Coronis fruitus absolutely do show up, although they also have shown up in the unburned forest as well. But it's nice to see them out in the study area. So what about going back to my previous butterflies that I said are worth taking a look at? So echo blues, you can see they still, based on the max counts, we'll get into that a little bit later, they still very much seem to prefer the unburned forest, although something happened in 2025. Once we jump over to cedar hair streaks, oh, same thing. They're still not even in the burn area. There was one in the power line, but remember the power line is already kind of at the periphery of the burned area, so anyone from that unburned edge might have jumped over to the power line for some nectar. Otherwise, they are still only found in the unburned forest. Same thing. It dropped in 2025. If anyone remembers this May, it got cold in May again. 2 years in a row, it got cold in May. So I think that just either sapped their population or maybe they just didn't fly when I was out there. I don't know, but I think probably had the same thing. But just, yeah, their flight period was just cold this year. Green commas, still primarily in the unburned area. You'll notice that the counts dropped. This is one of the big reasons for keeping notes. 2023 was a banner year for commas. So seeing that max count of 8, that may have been actually unusual for that habitat, given that we had commas all over the state in big numbers that year. So this is one of the reasons why it's important to keep those notes and why we like to compare between these different habitats, why we keep comparing it to the control. Pacific fritillars have exploded kind of in general. Maybe 2025 was a good year. If we looked at the burn forest only, we would think, oh, this is a species that's going to recover very quickly after a fire. But then if we take that 2025 data of a max count of 4, but then we look at the unburned forest, oh, maybe Pacific fritillars just had a good year. And it actually has nothing to do with burn conditions. So time will tell. And mourning cloaks kind of disappeared, which in Western Washington, we're not entirely unfamiliar with that. Mourning cloaks kind of go through boom and bust cycles, so maybe this isn't a butterfly that's worth long-term. I'm obviously going to study every butterfly long-term, but this might not be one of those core butterflies I keep track of. Maybe 2023 was just a boom year for this butterfly as well, and therefore it showed up there. Just interesting that it didn't show up in the burn area. So there was one butterfly that particularly intrigued me in the first year of the wet refugia portion of the burn. I actually regret not having a picture of this area now because it is a freaking jungle of lush plants. I'll rectify that this year. And that was margin whites. So margin whites the first year only in that wet refugia. The maximum count I had in one day was 6 individuals. And this is not really a butterfly that travels a lot. So that would indicate that those ones survived the fire in that wet refugia. And you compare it to someplace like the unburned forest. Now, the unburned forest is largely conifer. I do find margin whites more in kind of mixed forests or deciduous forests. Pure conifer forest, not so much. So it's not surprising that they're not super common in the unburned forest. But anyway, surprised me to find 6 margin whites in the burned area, but it was only within the wet refugia. Now, since then, they have exploded along the burned area because that area is recovering very nicely with all these herbaceous plants. The alders are healthy, and kind of just all of this is looking like good margin white habitat only 3 years after the burn, so long as they had a seeded population. Um, you'll notice that in 2024, in the burned area, completely dropped off. 2024, according to my notes, was kind of a poor year for margin whites in general. Once again, hard to draw conclusions after only 3 years. So we'll just kind of keep you updated as I keep counting butterflies. But that was very much a surprise to see that many margin whites in the burn forest. I think that may end up being a signal over noise. Clodius parnassians were also present the first year. I would have had the same kind of conclusion similar to the margin white had I not been looking at the unburned forest. They seem to really like right after, a couple years after the burn, but you look at the unburned forest had even more. So maybe 2025 was just a banner year for Clodius parnassians. One interesting thing I've noticed about Clodius is I cannot find along the burned area, I cannot find their host plants. I can find so much herbaceous vegetation growing in the understory, no bleeding hearts. Now, I do start my surveys in mid-May. Perhaps it's too late. Perhaps on that exposed ridge, bleeding heart is already done. So I do plan on going up there maybe mid-April to see if I can find their hosts. But Parnassians are also known, they are known to be travelers to a higher degree than, say, margin whites are. So my initial thought was perhaps these are ones coming into the area, whereas I do find bleeding hearts along the unburned forest. But that also might make sense by mid-May in that the unburned forest is cooler, it's shaded, and maybe they just last longer there than in this exposed landscape of the burn. But regardless, had a lot of Clodius parnassians in both the burn area and unburned forest in 2025. Another reason for keeping notes, Western tiger swallowtails, I said, hey, I'm not seeing any real big significant differences or eye-popping differences between the burn forest and the unburned forest. And then 2024 and 2025, bam, crashed. If anyone remembers, 2022 and 2023 were great years for Western tiger swallowtails. 2024, not so much. 2025, I remember it as kind of like an average year. And maybe they just don't really like this particular area in general. And during the banner years, they were just kind of everywhere and they flew everywhere anyway. So something to keep track of. But yeah, 2023, their presence here was more because they were just having a great year, a second year in a row. But this is what I'm really looking forward to are the butterflies that are not present in year one, not present in the unburned forest, then showing up. They are the colonizers. They like the early succession stuff. And this is where I think of Melita crescens. In the core area, it is loaded with thistles. And that is one of the things that the herbicides are definitely trying to control, are things that are going to sap nutrients from the conifers. So I did see that the herbicides had an effect on fireweed. They did have an effect on the thistles. But what was fascinating, I do want to take a picture of this in the future. I did not this year, was they would die at the midpoint and then they would just send up fresh shoots right from the dead point. It did not really affect them long term at all. They went right by it. You just slowed them down. So you see Melita crescents. I found my first one in 2024. I was excited about it, but I have gotten strays on the Mountain Loop Highway before, so didn't think much of it then. But this is one I was anticipating given the number of thistles landing and seeding in the burn area. And now they are a consistent butterfly that I find kind of throughout the study area. California tortoiseshells, they're not going to be one that you would expect long term because they also have boom and bust years. I mean, really boom and bust every 10 years. So not one I expect to see big time trends of. But one thing I did notice that was interesting was that they definitely seem to prefer the unburned forest over the burned areas, which I found striking given that they just kind of travel. What is it about the forest that they liked? But I did present this at the LEPSOC conference workshop in fall. And someone did tell me that they find California tortoiseshells more active in the afternoon, which I hadn't really hadn't really noticed before. Given the aspect and the timing that I have available, what I do is I count the burned area in the AM, about 10 a.m. to noon, because it's exposed and it faces kind of southeast. And I get more things just heat up there faster. I then make my way down to my car and I drive up 4 miles to the unburned area. And given the canopy cover, I'm not going to zoom back real quick. Given the canopy cover and the direction of the road, there's a certain point in the day when the sun rotates that the whole road is lit up. If I were to go up there at 10 a.m., it would all be shaded. There would be no butterflies, so I can only count that area at a specific time of day. So it works out that I surveyed the burned area in the AM and the unburned forest in the PM. About 1 p.m. is about prime for that area. So this particular researcher's suggestion was you might just be surveying that area when they like to fly. So I need to go back to the burned area when we have a good California tortoiseshell year and see if all these numbers in the burn area are up in the afternoon. Maybe I'm just surveying the wrong time of day and drawing conclusions that maybe aren't true. Hydaspes fritillaries are also consistent. I found this data to be perplexing in that they are increasing in the burn forest, but completely disappeared in the unburned forest. What happened there? So kind of similar to like Clodius parnassians, I think, they seem to really recover quickly after a burn. No, wait, looks like they just had a good year. But kind of similar to margin white where, well, it was pretty consistent across all the other habitats, but the burn forest really pumped up. That might be a signal. So I'm thinking that this might be a signal as well. It's not like we had a lot in the unburned forest either. We had none. So something happened here. It's not exactly a small butterfly I'm going to miss. So perhaps Hydaspes do recover quickly after a fire, and something else happened here. Time will tell. And then, of course, there are butterflies that don't really seem to care. First year after the wildfire in 2023, woodland skippers were a rarity, but they quickly bounced back and remained common, or at least consistent, across all of the habitats. I'm going to stop here real quick just because I noticed some questions are starting to build up.
Yeah, it's about the herbicides that were used. And Regina.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Regina. Appreciate that. So yeah, not trying to eliminate the weeds, just trying to keep them from overtaking the tree seedlings. I did see them, like I said, I did see it slowing down the weeds, but not killing them.
I
Anyway,
think it was 2,4-D. There are a couple other comments there. I don't think it was 2,4-D. There are a couple of other compounds that I couldn't quite clock, but I don't recall 2,4-D. Do you, David, remember what the compounds were, the herbicide?
I barely passed chemistry. I am not the person to
Okay, okay.
ask about that. Maybe
Clomiphene or something like that. So it's
maybe someone else can chime in.
yeah.
I'm listening to me
I
talk
don't
for 2
remember seeing 2,4-D on that sign that you showed, but there were a lot of chemicals listed, but I don't remember seeing 2,4-D. I think primarily that's used on Scotch broom. We don't use it at all at work.
There you go.
Yeah.
But
Right.
Yeah,
Boss,
there's no 2,4-D there. There's no
I'm not
2,4-D.
even I'm not even going to try to pronounce some of these.
Yeah.
Glyphosate, imazapyr,
That's
hexazyme.
about it. I can pronounce MSO.
Yeah, there you go.
Glyphosate is the primary agent in 2,4-D.
No,
Oh.
actually, it's not.
I thought glyphosate was Roundup.
Yeah, glyphosate.
Glyphosate is the active
Roundup.
ingredient in Roundup, but it's
Sorry,
like
yeah,
it's the
but,
chocolate and the chocolate cake, and it is not part of the formulation for 2,4-D.
That's right.
You're saying it tastes like chocolate cake?
I was
Go ahead and try it and let me know.
Like I said, I totally obeyed these signs.
So there's another comment
My comment?
from Caitlin as well, and from Allison Center. Do you want to address those or?
1 second, James. James, did you say you had a quick comment?
Yeah, 2,4-D is not that uncommon, actually. The Forest Service used to use it all the time, also in BC and clear cuts. It's the standard chemical in weed and feed, and it's not systemic, but it kills broadleafs, like willows, and other shrubs that compete with seedlings. And I don't think it has anything to do with Roundup, unless some of those names might be like a product that's a combination of different chemicals, so it's not really clear what's in them unless you read the fine print. So
Okay.
No, all of those chemicals listed are just a single active ingredient, but
That's
it may have been a tank mix, but they listed 3 chemicals that are just a plain single active ingredient. They're not compounds.
Yeah, so
Yeah, anyway.
2,4-D is a completely separate compound. You're right, Regina. And so that's dichloropheno oxyacetic acid. And so that's a very specific compound, and it wasn't on that list.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
one
you're
of
a
the
better woman than I am.
Nah.
it's one of the
So-
2 active ingredients in Agent Orange that they dumped all over Vietnam.
So Caitlin, can you chime in because your longer comment is worth elaborating on, at least to people who aren't going to read the entire comment.
Yeah, no, I was trying to kind of answer those questions a little bit. That, yeah, the standard forest rotation is typically 40 to 50 years between each harvest. And when you clear cut or burn, they'll site prep the unit. So it's a broad scale spray to kill pretty much everything there in preparation for planting. And then that's usually in the late summer. And then they'll plant in the late fall over the winter. And then if it's a site that tends to get a lot of competition, like the weeds sprout right back up again and everything, then they may do a release spray in the spring, the following spring, sometimes 2 years after planting. And then after that, usually the trees have grown up enough that they can take care of themselves, and there will not be any more spray activities after that until they harvest for the next cycle.
Mm-hmm.
That's very helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. Yeah.
It might be worth noting that I only saw those signs in the clear cut area in 2024, 2025. They did not seem to spray, at least they didn't tell me they did, the year after the burn.
Yeah, it looked like the first sign, I think it said 2023 or something. And then
Oh,
so they,
hold on. Did my memory deceive me? Let's see. 2023. Okay, never
yeah,
mind.
August,
My bad.
August 23. So that's your site prep. Then they would
My
have
bad.
planted in 2024, and then they did a release spray, which is the cloporalid, in May of 25. So yeah. So you
You know, we were
shouldn't
hope
you shouldn't
we were
see any
hoping
more
you were
spray
gonna
after
be
that. Yeah.
we were hoping you were going to be here, Caitlin.
No,
Yeah,
Are they
yeah, no, I'm interested.
are
thanks.
they are they spraying the whole clear cut area or
That's my
Yeah,
impression. So
yeah,
it's just
they spray with a helicopter usually. Sometimes, well,
mm,
it depends on the site. Sometimes they'll do ground spray, so there'll be a crew out there with backpacks and doing spray. But usually,
I
if they're
saw
able to, they'll try to get it with a helicopter because it's more efficient.
I saw a tank truck coming down the road that belonged to them. I'm not sure if that's what it was or not.
It could have been. Sometimes they use those just for water. Um,
Yeah, that could have been for the seedlings and stuff like that. That could have easily been.
No, they use the water for like mixing the chemicals or
Ah,
just
okay.
to have it on site for fire protection. So usually when there's any kind of spray operations or harvest operations, they have to have a fire truck somewhere within a couple miles. It's a regulation.
I am going to be contacting you before I publish any of this data just to make sure I have my facts straight.
David, what is the ownership of the clear cut area?
It is a private timber company.
It's Chinook. It's Chinook Timber. It's
Yep.
actually used to be Longview Timber, which is who I used to manage actually the GIS data for that very area that he's working on.
Mm.
Who's
So,
I
speaking?
I do have
Caitlin,
to get a permit to go out there.
Who said that?
Who did?
Caitlin.
Oh, that
Caitlin.
was you, Kate? I didn't
Yeah,
recognize you.
yeah.
Sorry.
Well, and as I told David, I know so the name on those signs, I know that guy, so I could probably try to get you in touch with him. But yeah,
He knows I've never actually been in contact with him. He knows I'm out there because I do have a permit
okay,
to go out there. So he knows of me. I've never actually talked to him though.
okay.
I've talked to his crews going, "Who's this weirdo with the butterfly net?" when they're doing
David, would you
because
go back to your slide for
yeah,
margin points, please? There
yeah.
two data sets. What's the deal with those two?
So you notice that so I purposely left out 2025
Yeah,
simply to make the 2025 results more dramatic.
but I'm not getting the.
So it's the same graph. The bottom one has
Yep.
2025 added.
Yep. Same data.
Oh, just on a different scale.
Different scales.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
thank
so
you.
different scales because 2025 the population of the burned area erupted. So I was trying to make the
Yeah,
explosion more dramatic.
I got it now. Thanks.
Yep.
I'm slow tonight.
No
Okay.
worries.
Thank you so much, David, for taking that moment to answer those questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, hey, I learned stuff too. So, of course, my question now is like, well, how do I count these things? Well, maybe that's the wrong question to ask. It's one, two, three, four. Anyway, but how to present my counts. So if you look at, let's say, gray hair streaks, they're now showing up throughout the burned area, not just the power line. Um, but they're a consistent butterfly. But in Western Washington, they never really get that common. You find them in ones and twos. So probably throughout the study, this is all it's ever going to look like is just max counts of one versus if I present them as total counts, as in how many gray streaks did I find throughout the year, you see, oh, 2025 did give us significantly more butterflies. I think there's eight. So I got eight versus three. 2024 was a down year for gray hair streaks throughout the state. So that kind of helps explain why no 2024s. So, of course, the good news is I don't have to pick and choose. I can do both. So, total counts tells more of a story about gray hair streaks after a fire than max counts does in an area that these butterflies just tend not to be that common in Western Washington at all.
So,
I mean, if
a question, David, if you could go back. So, by that, do you mean that the total counts are the sum of every time you went out to count? And if so, how many different counts are representative in the total?
and that is the other problem with presenting it as total counts. I survey more now than I did in 2023.
Uh-huh.
Because originally in 2020, I thought, oh, once a month is good enough. No, I quickly learned that that is not enough. So now I dropped it down to every 3 weeks. The problem is that, okay, here's the weekend I need to survey to keep my 3 week schedule. Well, how likely is it in Western Washington, especially in May and June, that that weekend is going to be sunny? Probably not. So then sometimes it get pushed out to another month, and that's just too infrequent for me. So now it's my protocols every 2 to 3 weeks. If that second week has a sunny weekend, you better take that opportunity because you don't know what the third week's going to hold. Is it going to be rainy, cloudy, cold, whatever? So in 2025, I did much more surveys, and maybe that contributes to finding more quote unquote total gray hair streaks. So there's a problem with both methods. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. I
It's
understand
not
it's
as clear,
complicated.
not as clear cut as I would like,
Yes, I
unfortunately.
understand.
Um, I mean, so if you look at the same thing with margin white max counts throughout the 2 years versus total counts, this helps tell a story. The graphs look much the same. It does help tell a story, though, in that, wow, it really does look like 2024 was a down year. These four for max count were the only four I found in 2024. So that was kind of that kind of it is interesting. Although you look at the kind of the amplitudes, the scales for the other counts, and they're much line up. So it gives you some more information in this species, but maybe not a revolutionary tale here. So it's going to vary by species. I can do both, obviously, if I want to, in like a supplementary graph section of a paper I might write in the future, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm still kind of like, yeah, how do I present this in like yearly reports to my mentors and those interested? Couple more graphs here. I kind of thought the one on the right here might be worth pursuing this idea of unique versus shared species. So, what are species that are unique to the control forest? What are the species that are unique to the burn forest? And then what species are found in both? Now, this doesn't take into account this doesn't take into account abundance. It's just kind of presence and absence. So you notice that basically, I'm thinking that as the burned area starts to mature and get closer in structure to the unburned, you would expect that shared graph to take up that shared bar to take more and more of that bar. What you notice though is like, man, the diversity of the unique species of the unburned forest seems to be declining in those years. So that's kind of interesting. Anyway, cumulative species curve, I kind of expected. You look at the trends for each of these habitats. You would kind of expect the unburned forest to plateau pretty quickly because it's the same habitat as year 2023 as 2025, et cetera, et cetera. Um, I'm really interested to see kind of how the cumulative species curve, basically the addition of new species to the species list for these habitats changes. You'll notice that the burn cut is increasing rapidly. Um, Species richness at each one by year. This one I found interesting too because you notice that the burn cut is species richness is increasing rapidly. Unburned declined, which you can kind of tell from this graph here with the shared versus unique species. So I don't know what was happening in the unburned forest, but maybe just forest habitats across Western Washington maybe had a bad year. Um, but the number of just species richness declined. Burn forest is actually holding pretty steady. It increased a little bit. And like I said, I kind of expect the power line to not show that much difference in species richness as it has an immediate input of new species from not that far away. Now, so I have this date. I did spell that right. Good. No, I didn't. Okay, there's a typo. Um, the diversity abundant index that I created, I'm not reinventing the wheel. It's a shoddy amateur index, but it helps me tell a different story. I wanted a way to incorporate abundance so I can maybe see a bit different of the story. So, for example, if you look at the burn cut, it has more species richness in 2025 than the unburned forest does. Can everyone see my cursor and trying to like kind of point to where I want to? Maybe I should
Yes.
highlight the future presentation. But if you incorporate abundance, you'll notice that the burn cut still had fewer butterflies overall than the unburned forest. So while this may be more species rich, it was often singletons showing up that led to the higher species richness. Things like that one Anna's blue that showed up, or the one clouded sulfur in there. So one thing that I find interesting is that the burn forest already in 2025 has more butterflies overall than the unburned forest, although that also might be due to the fact that the unburned forest, for unknown reasons, has been declining in both diversity and abundance. When you look at just species richness by year for the entire project, you notice that 2023 seems to have been a good year for butterflies, and maybe we're returning just kind of more to base level, or maybe we're declining. Maybe we're in a butterfly slump a little bit, and maybe 2023 was base level. Who knows? Total, I found 33 species found for the project, but that gives you a little bit of like, okay, is this a project-wide thing? Is it specific to different areas, et cetera, et cetera? A lot of data to take in here.
So,
So what?
David, if you can just go back, there's a question, a pertinent question to those graphs.
Yeah,
Jim Bergdahl is asking about a rarefication curve for each site. I don't know what that means.
that is beyond my pay grade. Um, I've looked into that. If I when I do publish this data and I want to get more into the weeds of the statistics, I may be seeking a co-author that can actually do that. This is kind of introductory stuff that might how do I say might lead me down more questions and make me look for more stuff. Does that make sense?
I can answer. Rarefaction curve is a real simple curve. You often see it in biodiversity studies. It's an
Mm-hmm.
XY graph. There's sample effort along the x-axis and number of species that you've accumulated over that time period, or sample effort on the y-axis. And I think your bar graph basically shows it, but it's a little bit easier to read in a rarefaction curve.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, and I haven't
Yeah,
looked
so it's
into the
just an
rarefaction.
extra. You can,
Uh-huh. Go on.
yeah, so it'll be a real steep curve in the beginning,
Yep.
and then it'll kind of reach an asymptote, but theoretically it will never totally flatten out.
Mm-hmm. The so is that kind of more like the species? Oh, let me go click back, go back. Is that kind of like the species curve here?
Yes, but it's not a rarefaction curve. Those aren't really curves; they're like bar
No, no,
graphs
no. But you might be able
that
to
you
make
got
a point
drawn
out of it.
there.
Okay. There's another, and I'm
Yeah,
blanking. I'm blanking on the
you have the
measurement.
data there. It's just
Uh-huh.
sorry.
So no,
So
you're good. That's the problem with delays in Zoom. Um, there's
Yeah,
there's a metric that Merrill Peterson suggested I check out, and I'm looking up at that one. It's the name is escaping me right now, so I apologize for that.
uh,
Um, I'm looking at ways in the future to analyze that. This is kind of more like, hey, this is a quick and dirty index that might point me in different directions. Is kind of my idea. Yeah, not to
yeah.
send out.
Well, those different types of habitats you're sampling, they probably will have very different rarefaction curves, in the sense, like the burnt area, there may be more strays that come in, so they're going
Hmm.
to accumulate really slowly. Whereas if you do your samples in the forest, the rarefaction curve might be lower number of species, and it might reach that a lot quicker.
Hmm.
yeah, so thank you for
So,
bringing that up as an alternative way to look at the
oh
data.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
in no way am I publishing my diversity abundance index. It is crude. So what now? Um, my plan, my original plan, was to survey years 1 to 5 and then revisit year 10, revisit year 15, revisit year 20. And then Caitlin had to tell me that she finds that her clear cuts seem to peak in diversity years 5 through 8. And like, okay, I guess I'm sampling every year until year 10. I mean, I'm clearly not against long-term projects. Spent 8 years on the Mountain Loop Highway. What's 10, right? So, but then yeah, maybe revisit year 15 and year 20 because I got a life to live. I got other projects I want to do. So. We'll kind of see about that. I'm thinking, one survey every 2 to 3 weeks during the flight season. Um, this is year 3 for the next 7 years, basically. Going on year 4 now. We'll see what that does. But basically, what to do with all this data and maybe make some suggestions. Well, we mentioned earlier, a big fire at the southeast corner of the Olympics, the Bear Gulch fire, and this was a big one. This was 50% bigger than the Bolt Creek fire. Now, what makes me excited, I mean, I'm sorry Tana had to deal with that smoke for all summer long. You live along Lake Cushman, right, Tana?
We were 3 miles from the fire.
Yeah. So she got the brunt of it as far as all the smoke. So sorry I had to deal with that all summer. But I'm excited as far as what the possibility is in that we have areas within this section where we have pre-butterfly data. It's what I could have dreamed of. So unfortunately, one of our classic Johnson hairstreak sites burned. And according to people that know that area better than I do, it fairly severely burned. So, but we have pre-data that now we can directly compare what comes afterwards. So as much as I lament that we had a classic spot for a rare butterfly that could be easily seen is now gone, I'm excited to see kind of what comes next. So that'll be things like the first year is going to be important. Thank you, Bob, for pointing that out, in that it indicates survival, like the margin whites, the max count of 6 margin whites, and the wet refugia. So that's going to be critical. Kind of duration, all that kind of stuff, as far as how much you need to sample, et cetera, et cetera. Try to get someone out there that knows birds and bumblebees, please, because like I said, it sucks when I'm out there by myself. One last thing before I go. So, this is another thing I don't have the pictures of, but you notice that the side of the unburned forest is lined with alders, right? Well, those things grow like weeds. Those are weed trees. And there are many sections of that road that are now getting quite shaded. I'm actually suspecting that this is why diversity and abundance are dropping on the unburned section. So, I decided, hey, what's another little experiment to add on, right? So I decided to take a little handsaw and start sawing large, like, some decent sized swaths of clear the alders for decent swaths to let in more light on the ground for more of the herbaceous vegetation and see if that has an effect. Like, do I find more butterflies in those sections I cleared? So, unfortunately, I did not really get to complete that this fall because I tackled a rather sizable one, kind of made some vibration. Something landed on my lips, and I felt nothing but pain.
Oh,
I did not see the ground hornet nest that was right there.
oh dear.
The glasses were bent in a different event. So I look like a mess there. So ladies, you do not need to get Botox. Just go kiss a hornet. It's free. And on that note, I'll end with that. So now I want to go up there early, early, early. Like if I get a clear day in February, I'm going to go out there and clear some more alders when there are no hornets in the ground. I'm happy to report that I ran faster than I ever have. They only got me that one time and one in my butt, but that was not very deep because I was running. But they got me good right there.
The sacrifices you make for science, David, is very impressive, I have to say. You got the photos to show.
Oh yes, that was good. That was a
David,
good that was a good day.
Well,
David,
thank you
you're
so
not going to
much,
show
David.
You're not
Sorry?
gonna
What's that?
you're not gonna show the picture of your butt?
No, that didn't swell as much.
So thank you so much, David. Really appreciate your presentation. And now everybody is free to unmute and open discussion. I know we've had some really good discussion so far, but please feel free to chime in and unmute yourself. It's free for all now.
Yo, David, I have to
Yeah.
go pretty soon, but I got to tell you, I got two things right off the bat. One is the cow torch are probably not breeding residents in your area, so
No, no, no,
right,
no.
right. Number
Definitely not.
two, more importantly, we have pretty good data from the index to Garland Mineral Springs transect.
Oh,
Would that
really?
be, yeah, would that be useful to you? It's a little bit more toward mountain, but
No, that'd be useful. I'd be interested in seeing it.
well, I can manage that.
Oh, thank you, sir.
David,
Yes, Bob.
your butt might not have swelled as much. It might have been a prettier picture.
Ex
Never mind.
Kick him off, Paulette. Kick him off.
I do have a real question. I do have a real question.
What's up?
Do you have any idea what it was like for those two dudes to hike out? I mean, that kind of left us in the middle of the
Go.
story there.
It did. It did. They have the full video. Just go type in YouTube Bolt Creek Fire hikers, and you will get that 10-minute video. And they talk about the steps they had to take to get out. But obviously, they shared the video. They did get out.
Thank you. Great study. Great work.
Thanks. And more to come. Because like I said, this is year 3. And I'm planning on doing this for the next 7 years straight.
Kathy, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
No. I was curious about the plantanthera, which orchid you had way back when, but that seems like the very beginning.
I think I identified it correctly. It's in my notes somewhere. So if you want to send me an email, I'd be happy to give you
Yeah,
that,
it looked like
that ID.
a stricta to me, and I wondered if that sounds familiar.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, that's what it was.
So I think there's only 2 options in our neck of the woods.
Yeah, I haven't seen one up there, so I was interested, but should
Yeah.
be its range.
And that's another reason why I want to clear some of those alders. Keep that orchid coming up.
Yeah, that was exciting.
Hey, I was going to mention about the alders. I don't know if you know this, that alders are nitrogen fixing like lupin.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, so that's another reason why they tend to come back like crazy after wildfires or.
Well, this was on the unburned road.
Yeah, so along the roadsides, they get really brushy
Yep.
on the roadsides. But
Yep. And I'm sure the Forest Service comes through there occasionally and clears them, but at this point I'm like, man, this is getting real shady, and this is probably why butterflies are not that common in 2025. So I tried to do some clearing.
Yeah.
So
Much to my detriment.
So David, that road of the unburned forest is National Forest, not the private timber company?
Oh, there's active forest management done there. There's a couple of sections they've done some clearing, so like selective clearing. I don't think that is private though. I think that is national forest land.
Yeah, it's that area is checkerboarded, so it's like a full full section, like a township range section. So 1 mile by 1 mile square, alternating squares of the Chinook timberland and national forest. And I think there might be a little bit of tribal land in there too.
Let me put it this way. I had to
corner.
get a permit. I had to get a permit to go through the burned area. I did not have to get a permit to go to the unburned road.
Yeah, the Chinook land is closer to the highway, and then the further
Yep.
north you go, it gets into more national forest.
Did you tell anybody you were thinning their forest for them?
Shh. I don't think they'd mind too much.
No, probably not.
Because like I said, I'm sure they come through. When I started the project, they were little tiny baby alders. So it's like clearly someone's come through and whacked that before. So I'm sure that periodically they come through and do that. I just kind of wanted to make like 20, 30-foot swaths repeating down the road to see, hey, do I see more butterflies in these swaths, which would suggest, oh, hey, as these things grow up, they're shading everything and not as much herbaceous plants, either hosts or nectar sources that the butterflies can go after. So they just plain leave.
No, I think that's very inventive.
Well, it was painful too.
One more question.
I have a question too.
Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead, Paul.
Go ahead.
No, you go, Robert.
But just a quick one. That photograph you had of the bluebell tiger moth next
Yes.
to the yellow composite, was that tansy ragwort or a native senecio or something else?
I don't know. I'd have to either look in my notes to see if I'll have to see if I identified it or not.
Thank you.
Okay. I have a question.
James,
for
go
David.
for it.
So you mentioned you're getting a bunch of stragglers, like onesies and twosies showing up now and
Yeah.
then, or frequently.
Yeah,
maybe?
little
And-
dispersers coming in.
Yeah. So and you mentioned some of them are probably coming from Eastern Washington. So
I mean,
are,
I imagine.
are a bunch of those species more commonly associated with alpine zones?
Not Juba, not Akmon, not Euryphile. Um, so Mariposa and Annas, absolutely. I find them more subalpine, 4,000 feet plus. Pulchella, the field crescent, yes. But along the power lines, I got way more species that I associate with Eastern Washington, and that kind of supports my hypothesis of, hey, this is just a unobstructed dispersal zone that they can use as to travel.
Hmm.
But things like
The reason I
Go on.
mention that is I work mostly on crabbed beetles, and there's like 700 species in the Pacific Northwest. And a lot of times when I sample clear cuts or even burned areas, there tends to be a lot of species that come down that can fly from alpine areas. And then they probably, once it gets regrown, they probably disappear,
Sure.
So
I
there's
mean,
actually there's actually a group of crabbed beetles in the Northwest that are specialized to occur in recently burnt areas. In fact, they even show up when the ashes and stuff are still hot. So they must be like, and they're strong flyers. They must be like honing in on infrared radiation or something,
Or smell.
which is pretty cool.
sounds
You probably
plausible.
see them. They probably occur up in the areas you're working at. Actually, they look just like little specks of charcoal. Actually, they even have the exact same sheen. So anyway,
If you have my email, I'd be interested if you send me like the species name. I can look it up and see if I see them. But kind of same thing between the butterflies and moths and birds and bumblebees. I'm like I got too much. But I'd be interested. I'm definitely taking pictures of just about anything interesting I see up there.
yeah, these beetles are fairly common. They have huge ranges all across the northern hemisphere. Most of the species, but they kind of indicate there's a whole fauna that's totally adapted to chasing, recently burnt areas, and then they just keep moving around the landscape somehow.
I mean, it's kind of like the black-backed woodpecker, kind of like the big megarissa wasps. They chase the fires because that's where their resources are.
Dave, are you finding morels up there?
So I'm not much of a morel hunter, but oh man, did all the Forest Service workers I found thought I was hunting morels because the year afterwards, yes, that road was thronged with mushroom hunters. And people were coming back, with buckets of morels. So they were absolutely out there. Kind of moderate numbers 2024, and I saw nobody in 2025. But yeah, someone says, "You got up here hunting mushrooms like, with this net?" I hand over my permit, like, "Oh, you're the butterfly guy. Okay, cool."
So, Tana, I know that you and Karen are going to be doing that work in the Olympics. I'm glad David reminded me of that. Do you have anything you want to add or comment on, given David's work? Oh,
I'm very shy when it comes to this kind of stuff. Uh, I'm just I'm just gonna rely on him for a lot of assistance in my searching. So I appreciate that he's willing to share all this.
I mean, I can kind of give you direction, but Tan, I trust you as far as you have a natural seeking ability. What did Pelham call you?
she's a finder.
No,
Totally.
Pelham called her Scrappy.
Scrappy.
So
Yes,
if
call me
Pelham gives
Scrappy.
her if Pelham gives her a job, she goes for it. So, I mean, I can definitely say
Fine.
like, hey, we'll have to establish certain places you go repeatedly, but Tana's going to get the work done.
Tana found Mariposa copper eggs underneath
Mm.
the hardtack.
Uh-huh.
Well, we're very fortunate to have you on this project, Tana. So thank you very much. And this is a great collaboration between different, members of WBA. So it's very exciting.
She will find out what you want to know.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments before we conclude for the evening?
Anybody else seen any more new spring butterflies yet?
I saw a California tortoiseshell today. That's about all I can report.
I didn't see any butterflies today, but I saw the first queen bumblebee out today.
I got my first mosquito bite today.
Mhm.
Too early for that.
Oh, yeah, there were a few of those buzzing around too. Yeah.
I'm in Spokane.
Yeah,
It
Regine.
was the first day of spring in Spokane today.
What did you see there?
What did you see?
Lots of sunshine and warm weather. I didn't see any. I didn't see any insects actually.
Here the first
But it felt
queen-
like you should have.
saw the first queen bumblebee here 2 weeks ago, and now
Oh, really?
now there's lots of honeybees on the snowdrops, but I haven't seen a butterfly yet.
Well, we're just 3 days into February, so it's kind of shocking, really.
Well, the earliest record I ever had here in Wahkiakum County for spring azures, echo azures, was February 28th. And that was a particularly early, mild winter, early year, a long time ago, 20 years ago or more. So I'll be out there. If we have more weather like this, I'll be out at Altoona seeing if we can better that.
We'll have to see because I mean 2015 kind of shaped up like this too. It was unseasonably warm, low snowpack, really early season. Um, I mean, I always kind of make fun of people for falling for fake spring out here, but a lot of the wildlife and flowers are telling me, nah, this ain't fake. There's something to it. Tana says that her deer around her house are shedding.
Wow.
Well, the
So
chorus frogs are in full throat here already.
that's the other thing I was gonna be up. Chorus frogs are going. So yeah, it's this may not be fake. All
Well,
hands on deck.
yeah, I mean, we have had, snows in March, so, fingers crossed that that's not where we're headed.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see. I mean, we survived 2015. Remember, our wildlife have seen all of this. This is nothing new to them.
Yeah, it's just hard to watch.
Oh,
So
I
Patricia
agree with
says,
you, especially
go
go
ahead.
on, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was good.
No, I was just saying, especially with the probable wildfires if it's that dry.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
agree with you. It's hard to watch as much as, it's new projects for me.
As if you needed more.
I know.
So Patricia says she saw a hibernating California tortoiseshell the other day, And Regina said it was 65 degrees at Mima Mountains today. You guys can just mute and tell these things yourself. But yeah. Any other comments?
My
I'm
librarian,
wearing my.
yeah, my librarian saw a morning cloak in Cathlamet a week ago.
Hmm.
But that's not a surprise.
No. No.
Yeah, I have a question from Spokane.
Shoot.
We used to have Washington butterfly meetings. We used to have Washington butterfly meetings over here, but we haven't had one since right before COVID.
We can talk to John Bauman about that. There's a fair contingent of butterflies over in the Spokane region, so you could probably petition to get that going again.
So
Yeah.
do you think he might still be available to help organize them, or?
I
When
mean,
I
he's
talked
retired.
to John, I talked to John about this last summer, why they don't have their meetings, why people from Spokane don't come to the Zoom meetings. And he said that they lost access to their meeting room and they haven't been able to find another one that they can afford. And also, Haley was the one who was really organizing stuff as far as the meeting, and she doesn't live in Spokane anymore.
Oh, she's busy now. Right,
She's
Haley?
busy.
You're here.
Haley, do you want to chime in?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we haven't had in-person meetings in Spokane since prior to COVID. And we were doing them at the Corbin Art Center. And I had access to that building when I worked there. And we were using the public library downtown prior to that. So I guess it would just depend, like, if we could arrange a place to do meetings, and having somebody to coordinate that as well.
I think the public library is still available. Was that free?
I don't know, because I think John was the one that kind of had that coordinated.
So James, do you have any problems with joining on Zoom? Is that why you're seeking that in-person meeting?
No, not at all. But it's always fun to get together, and we had some great meetings. A lot of them didn't have to do with butterflies, but but that's okay. We did bumblebees, pollinators. I did ice crawlers and
the social aspect of these meetings is, I think, one of the enjoyable things about them. So I agree with James on that just getting together with like-minded folks was good.
Yeah, it is. It really, there's no question about that. It is some effort to pull the meetings together and all. And so the other.
Well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, cost was another concern, right? Our room at the University of Washington just kept going up.
It was expensive, but for me, since I'm doing the programs, it's really a mixed blessing. It was really nice getting together, but on the other hand, we can have people from Idaho and from corners of Washington and from the East Coast, and so it's really mixed. And Spokane, I mean, it's lovely to have you join us tonight, James. So it's really a mixed blessing. But one of the things that I think has been extraordinary is having participation from all over the country, and also having speakers from all over the country, all over the world. And so, you lose things, you gain things.
Oh,
the room at the Center for Urban Horticulture was like the most expensive item in our budget. It was like basically it was half of our budget, and then only a dozen people would come, and I couldn't come. Most of the people that I see on this Zoom would not have been able to come. They never came to those meetings. But what I was suggesting to John Bauman in Spokane is that, they just get a meeting room where they can broadcast the Zoom meeting and people can get together and have their potluck. And then they still get the speakers from all over the country, and they get us for what that's worth.
I have only one thing to say about the Zoom meeting, which I think everything Paulette said was true. It's great to have these people from all over the place. They all tell me about how wonderful we are too. So, but being somebody who has in fact presented in the past on Zoom, I find it most difficult to give my presentations because I can't hear anybody laugh at my bad jokes.
Yeah.
So I would think next time that I give a presentation that everyone leaves their mics unmuted and don't go to the bathroom or talk or play
snore.
music.
That's a good idea, John.
We'll
Well,
give you a
for me,
special
I mean, I realize
dispensation.
it's a consideration because you don't know how hard it is to tell a joke and then not hear anybody laugh and then, go on as if they did and they didn't. And, you play off the audience. That's the whole deal. I know
Just
Kyle
do-
knows that, like you play off your audience.
And no,
Just do
John's
what
a
I do
plus
and assume
reminder.
everyone's cracking up.
It's very artificial. I mean, I very much appreciate the meetings because I would get to 1 or 2 a year in Seattle, maybe if that. So I really enjoy this. But on the other hand, it is artificial because the speaker doesn't get to interact. So I think that's a good idea. Let's leave them unmuted. Or think about it anyway.
Well, on that note, I'm gonna go have some dinner. So
Okay,
thank you,
well-
everyone. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and thank you for all the thoughtful questions and extra additions. Caitlin, James, anyone else who contributed to all the stuff that I'm still learning. So appreciate that.
Yeah,
good
well,
work.
Double D, you're the man, dude. That was great. I love it.
Very
Good.
talk, David. So it'll be
Right
on the
on.
recording, and I just wanted to say next month, James Adams will be giving our presentation on March 4th. So we'll look forward to seeing you all then.
What's
And
his topic?
we're still working that out.
That's great.
Be
Yeah.
sure
Probably
you edit out.
Moz. It's probably
Be sure you
Moz.
edit out the bomb in there.
Oh, I don't know if I know how to do that, but the Zoom.
Oh, we'll figure out how to do that.
Yeah. So, we have tools for getting them off immediately, and I reported him, but yeah, anyway, it's just a hazard.
Cool.
Zoom.
That is. All right. Good
Thanks
night,
again,
everybody.
David. Yeah.
Good night.
Good night.
All right. Happy Groundhog's Day. Jay.